Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the mini set today that just got announced. It's going to be coming out on February 14th. It's going to be including 38 new cards, and you can purchase it for gold or runestones. Exciting stuff, new cards always good to talk about. DK has all their cards revealed today. There's not going to be any more DK cards, but we get to have a look at all of them. The first one is Rhymescale Siren. This is a 3-mana Frost, one Frost Room for a 2/3 Undead Naga. And the effect, if you've cast 3 spells while holding this, freeze 3 random enemy minions. We've had this kind of condition in the past. It's actually quite hard to meet for a lot of decks. You have Queen Ashara and Handmaiden as the two that tend to see a bit of play still. It's not necessarily super hard for a Frost deck to cast spells. It's just, is the effect really worth it? I would say no. You can kind of compare this to something like Flurry, which doesn't have a condition. Past turn 5 freezes 2 minions for 0 mana. You get a body attached to this, and it maybe freezes 1 additional minion. I think it might be just a bit too weak. There's things like Might of Menethil available to DK, we can see, which is just seems a bit stronger as a card because you're also pushing the face damage whilst doing it. And generally all the good freeze cards tend to have damage attached to them, like Frostworm's Fury as well, for the Frost DKs, so I'm not sure this has got a home. I don't think it's possible to go for like a control route with the freeze deck that would want to run this either. It's generally a bit too hard to activate it in that route and a bit too low value of a card, I think. So yeah, probably not going to see too much play if I had to guess. Next we have the Construct Quarter, 3 mana, location, 3 charges, destroy a friendly minion to summon a 4/5 undead with Rush. So there's a couple cards we can compare this to get a feel. The first is the obvious one of Dark Transformation. Now this transforms for 2 mana and it only works on undeads. So that's generally weaker. The only upside for this really is that you can transform enemy undeads if in a pinch, if they're very threatening, but unlikely to be the case. But the fact that it's only on undeads is a big downside. This is like, if this was any minion, I think it'd actually be a pretty decent card. So for the location, yes, there's an extra mana. But you get those 3 charges, so it kind of reminds me a bit of the Priest location, which is slow to get going, but is a lot of value throughout the game. The Priest location draws a card and buffs instead. This one's going to kind of buff a bit more, plus give it that rush. So it works a bit better when you're not on the board. Or if you've already taken a trade, you can actually remove board a bit quicker. So it might be a bit similar to this in play style. It works really nice with tokens in Undead DK potentially. Works really nice with the hero power, just 2 mana you can get a 4/5 with rush. But it's also similar to another card, which is Warlock's Graveyard. Yes, the Desecrate Graveyard. At the end of your turn, destroy your lowest attack minion, summon a 4/4 Shade, last 3 turns. Kind of similar to this, but you have a bit more control over it, and it's not end of turn, and you get the rush effect. So overall, quite a bit stronger than this card. This card was not very good, but it wasn't completely awful, so I expect the location to be pretty good. Things like the student from Naga Teacher actually very nice with this, because if you go with the curve, you play this on 3 and make a 4/5. Then on turn 4 you play your teacher. Then on turn 5 you have the 1/1, which you can then transform because it's online again. Plus you have 4 extra mana to do something else. So that seems pretty strong tempo in these like minion based DK decks, but I could see this slotting into a lot of them. Probably not the pure frost one, but maybe Blood has some use for this as well. but definitely in the undead in the unholy one. Sorry. And finally, we got the Frost Queen Syndragosa. This is a new colossal minion. Very cool. It has a strange rune requirement in being 1 frost and 1 blood, which is not something you really pair together now. The effect, after an enemy minion is frozen, destroy it, and the wings have rush and freeze any character damaged by this minion. So it's kind of like a bit similar to Krakatoa, but you don't get the weapon, but the wings will actually destroy any minion. And it costs a bit more mana. Slightly better stat line, but yeah. Overall weaker than Krakatoa, I would say, but there are some interesting things you can do with this. The effect works not just for the wings, but for any freeze effect. There aren't loads right now for for DK that are very applicable, but we can have a look. These are the only ones. This one's you can't really pair with it because it's triple frost and syndragosa requires a blood. This one, the mana doesn't really work 7+4 unless the syndragosa sticks on board, but it's not really something you can rely on. And then we just got these two. This one again, it only freezes 1 minion and it's quite expensive, but there is the potential to play the refresh for mana if you want to do a big combo. But it's more likely that we're just going to see it paired with this, which for 1 mana extra you get to destroy any other minion on the board. So potentially a very big swing turn if you have syndragosa plus the icy touch to kill potentially 3 minions on the board and completely swing tempo. Now the rune requirement actually limits what you can put this in. Like frost and blood tend to be triple on both, so triple frost, triple blood. Can't really run this in either, so you need a reason to deviate. You could go for a rainbow DK and fit the last one as unholy, and this will fit quite nicely into that. This is just a really solid tempo play. It's 7 drop that kills 2 minions. Pretty nice. But maybe there's some potential for double blood, single frost, or double frost, single blood as well. Even if this doesn't find a place in a deck, which would surprise me, but it's possible, it's not going to be irrelevant because there are 2 Discover cards that can hit it, which see a lot of play. So, Hermitage, spend a corpse to discover a Blood Rune card. So even though this card has Blood and Frost, Hermitage can discover it, and you're not limited by the rune requirements then. So if you're running triple blood, you can gain access to syndragosa. The same goes for Frost Strike. Discover a Frost Rune. So these two both see a lot of play. So expect to see syndragosa picked off the Discover pretty often there. I think it's very cool, Colossal. Yeah, the art looks sick. There's one final card for us to talk about, which has been revealed from PC Gamer, and that is Rivendare War Rider. The 6-mana 6/6 Death Rattle, shuffle the other 3 horsemen into your deck undead. What does that mean? Well, we scroll down. Here are the other horsemen. We've got Zalik, Korth Az, and Blemu. I'm going to call it that. So these are basically, one has Taunt, one has Rush, one has Lifesteal, and then once all 3 of them die, you win the game. You destroy the enemy hero. So it's a win condition in itself. It's very slow if you were to actually play them out. 6 mana 6/6 is kind of a terrible card. I'm looking at again, Greymane, that sort of effect. You never really wanted to play it. And then having to do that 3 more times is just not very feasible in Modern Hearthstone for that to be your actual win con. So we're looking at ways to basically skip that and cheat it out. In Wild, there's Flark's Boomzooka that people are talking about, but let's talk a bit more about Standard, some ways you can do it. Shaman has this card from the other side, kind of a terrible card right now. But this works nicely if you have all of them in your hand. Because you play this card, and they all come out, and then they all die, and then you win. But you have to actually get to 10 mana and have all of them in your hand after playing the first one and having that die. It's quite a big route. Even drawing them's tough. They do have access to prescience, which can tutor big minions, but you can only tutor 2 at a time. It's overall very slow, this method, so I expect it not to be very good. Unless Shaman gets access to some new cards in this mini set that enable it a bit further. I'm probably saying no on the Shaman. Next up, there's Paladin, which has access to Frontlines, which is an interesting one. So if you've played the 6-drop and have it die, if you play Frontlines, it's going to pull out all your remaining horsemen at once. And then once they die, if they're not silenced or whatever, then you win. So there's some potential there. Ideally, you'd pair it with something that could keep you alive at the same time, because you're giving your opponent a board as well. So it's slightly risky. Also, there is Order in the Court access in Paladin. So drawing the front lines is not an issue particularly. It is again quite a slow combo. You've got to play the 6-drop, have it die, then you play the front lines and then have them die. I don't think there's any way to immediately kill your board whilst playing the front line. There's no like rush that destroys the rest of your board in standard right now. Sadly. Or maybe not sadly, we'll see. So yeah, I'm not sure if this combo is that great, but potentially with the neutrals and the paladin cards, there might be a way to enable it a little bit further. And lastly, I think Demon Hunter might have, well, maybe not lastly, Demon Hunter has access to Proving Grounds. Summon 2 minions from your deck, they fight. So this one kind of works pretty nice with it. You can maybe build your deck like a control style DK, using that as a win con. And the Proving Grounds you can pair with a normal Proving Grounds, right? Running like Zelag and Neptulon. And then you just run this extra minion as well. And then it's kind of nice because the Proving Grounds always gets a target. Sometimes you have problems with that deck where you draw all your minions, but with the new minion, shuffling extra ones into your deck, I guess it has another effect. And then all you have to do really is just play one of the 6/6s at some point, and then your next Proving Grounds will collide the other two into each other and destroy the enemy hero. So you could maybe build a Proving Grounds deck where it doesn't try to win through burn damage, which was typically the way before. You just have a bunch of anti-aggro cards, Chaos Leech, Eye Beam, etc., to beat the aggro decks. And then against the control decks, all you have to do is survive long enough to Proving Grounds out the combo, and then you can win through that. So it's a different direction the deck can take, and it might work actually. Some matchups you kind of want to smoke them down anyway, but you might be able to do that regardless. But it just does mean it frees up some deck building, because you don't have to include as much burn damage because you have a different win con. It might prove to be a bit too slow, since you have to pull out the first one, have it die, play at least one of the other 6/6s, and then play the second Proving Grounds and try and pull out the other two. So it might be a bit too slow, but there's definitely some potential there. And finally, Rogue has some potential with Scourge Illusionist and Master Reveler. There was a similar deck to this before, which I used to run with Colossals and the Invincible, but you can do a similar build. Idea being you have Snowfall Graveyard, you have Illusionist, and you have the Masked Revelers. If you only include this new Death Rattle, the Masked Reveler is going to pull out your Illusionists or your Death Rattle, which is then going to pull out your other stuff, and then it's probably not too hard if you have a bunch of Revelers and perhaps you also have the where's Rogue gone? Oh, sorry, here it is. If you also have the Snowfall Graveyard up, it's going to be kind of easy to get multiple minions out very cheaply and have them die, and probably not too hard to get the full combo going. So definitely some potential there. A very cool card. Probably a bit easier in Wild to activate this as it stands, but definitely some potential in Standard. I imagine one of them will be at least a meme deck come the Miniset launch. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be talking more about the Miniset cards as they get released, so stay tuned for that. Bye.